Stay with CBC News for extensive coverage. Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern on CBC Radio 1 and the CBC Listen app.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app for free.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're minus 8 degrees with blizzard conditions in downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. A blizzard has paralyzed much of southern Manitoba today. Most highways are closed, and on the highways still open, we're getting reports of multi-vehicle pileups. The CBC's Josh Crabb is out in the storm.
If you're thinking of driving on Manitoba highways, change your plans. I'm on Fermor, just east of Lagimodiere. Highway 1 eastbound has been closed here, and there are reports of a serious collision. We spoke with one man who came to pick up his wife. She was on her way to work when she got in a multi-vehicle collision, including semis. It happened on the overpass over Plessis Road and the rail line running underneath. Chris Parks parked his truck and walked to get her.
It was total whiteout on the bridge, and there's like a 12-car pileup. Her pickup truck is wedged up like this between two semis. She's lucky to be alive.
His wife was checked by paramedics and released. She was shaken up, but he's just thankful she survived. Winnipeg police have confirmed eastbound Fermor at Lagimodiere is now closed due to hazardous conditions. And officers say those conditions have led to many vehicles involved in collisions and a complete traffic blockage. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meanwhile, Mounties say if you don't have to go out on the roads, don't. Sergeant Paul Maneg says every detachment around Winnipeg has been running from one crash to another. He says there's a 7-car pileup on Highway 15 just east of the city. And Maneg says the storm blew in suddenly, causing havoc on the roads.
Almost basically as of 7:30. It's just every couple minutes the calls, and then really come 9 o'clock, it's between 9 and 10 and 10:30 is probably 20, 30 collisions were reported.
Winnipeg police are also dealing with collisions involving dozens of vehicles and at least one serious pileup. They ask anyone to avoid north and south perimeter at all costs. The dangerous conditions, meanwhile, have caused MPI to cancel road test appointments in some rural areas, among them Selkirk and Winkler service centers. This blizzard is expected to die down late this afternoon, and as the storm moves off, we're left with extreme cold right through the weekend and into next week. And you can hear the latest on the forecast with CBC weather specialist Riley Lachuk just after the news. Former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is confirming she will run to replace Justin Trudeau. This, while another high-profile member of the Trudeau government says he's decided against entering the race. Marina von Stackelberg explains.
In a short message on social media, Chrystia Freeland wrote, "I'm running to fight for Canada." Her official campaign launch will be on Sunday. Freeland was expected to put her name forward and is considered a frontrunner. So far, she's got the support of about a dozen MPs, as well as 2 ministers, Mark Holland and Diane Leboutillier. Meanwhile, Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, who was considering a run, has said he's decided against it, saying he needs to focus on his cabinet role. It's the same reason several other ministers gave for not running. This all comes the day after former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney announced he's running. House Leader Karina Gould is expected to launch her own campaign this weekend. Other hopeful candidates have less than a week to put their name forward. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
And in the United States, the inauguration ceremonies for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance next Monday will be held indoors, we're told. The weather in the usually balmy Washington, D.C. is expected to be dangerously cold on Monday. And Trump says he ordered to hold the swearing in the Capitol Rotunda. The last time it happened was 40 years ago, for the second inauguration of Ronald Reagan. The following parade will also be held indoors at Capital One Arena. And the Gaza ceasefire agreement is a step closer to being ratified today. Israel's cabinet is voting on the agreement after it was approved by a smaller security cabinet. Israel's approval has been delayed by internal squabbles. Chris Brown has your details.
I'm outside Israel's cabinet offices in Jerusalem, where ministers are expected to approve the ceasefire deal hammered out in Qatar. It's not done yet. There's going to be a second cabinet meeting later today that should remove the final hurdle towards releasing hostages and Palestinian detainees starting on Sunday. The Prime Minister's office released a statement earlier overnight saying the text of the deal has been agreed to, and that came after a day of last-minute glitches, which Israel blamed on Hamas, but internal politics are clearly also an issue. Far-right Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has said he will quit this government unless Israel continues attacking Gaza, but other far-right ministers appear to be staying, which may hold Netanyahu's governing coalition together, at least for now. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
And finally, the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld federal legislation calling for TikTok to be banned in the United States. The ruling means unless TikTok is sold by its Chinese parent company by Sunday, new users won't be able to download the app and updates won't be available. This will eventually render the app unworkable. TikTok has more than 170 million users in the United States. The legislation to shut it down is based on claims it poses a threat to American national security. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app.
Magandang hapon. Good afternoon, Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in the host chair. This is Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. It is the big story of the day, as you've been hearing on your news. The weather, highways are closed. Police officers are asking people not to travel. School buses, the routes have been canceled. Some schools are closed. Stay tuned to Radio Noon. We'll hear just how bad it is out there and what you need to know to stay safe. We'll also hear how the province is managing as crews continue their snow clearing operations and dealing with all of those conditions. In this half hour, we'll head to the Manitoba-U.S. border at Emerson, where agents are working to stop illegal immigration while politicians in Ottawa do what they can to appease the incoming U.S. administration. Stay tuned for that and more coming up here on Radio Noon. We're going to be talking about the weather here. Riley Lechuk is in studio, and Riley, we'll actually get to you in a few moments because we're going to talk about these crashes first, because at least 30 crashes have been reported as the treacherous winter weather continues. Photos on social media show roads gridlocked, some users even describing them as multi-vehicle pileups. Blowing snow and blizzard warnings have been up since yesterday, but the treacherous weather has caught some folks off guard. You might be one of them. We're opening our we're opening our phone lines to folks in our next half hour after 12:30 to ask you what you have to do differently today because of the weather. What are the weather conditions like? Are like where you are? First, though, we're going to go around the province to see how Manitobans are managing. Sergeant Paul Manag speaks for the RCMP, and he joins us on the line now. Hi, Sergeant.
Hey, good afternoon.
You were heading to work today, and in one instance, all was all well. Then it quickly changed. I mean, how would you describe what it was like?
Yeah, I left home this morning and just before 7 a.m., and I would have described the conditions at that time as just the beginning of the freezing rain. Then probably within 20 minutes, that wind picked up and the snow really started falling, and the visibility even just between, like I say, I'm in the south end of the city to Portage Avenue here in the span of 20-25 minutes. You could really see the deterioration speeding up. And then, like I say, it's just snowballed there from between probably 7:30 and 10:30 this morning is when I'm sure our numbers are 30, 40 collisions by now, if not even more. Basically, southern Manitoba. It's, like I said, the highways are treacherous. There's no other word to describe it right now.
What's your sense of injuries right now? Have you heard of injuries, or have you received any reports of injuries or deaths as a result of any of these crashes?
We know there's a few with injuries. The severity, we're still waiting. At this point, we're letting the officers do their jobs, and we'll hopefully start digging through the information that's needed a little later on. I don't think there's probably an officer in southern Manitoba that isn't dealing with a crash right now. or writing it up. It's crazy. But as far as mostly non-events, as far as no injury and stuff, but like I say, I believe we do have a few out there. One possibly a very serious, and then a couple. Hopefully, everyone's going to be okay.
What is your advice to drivers? I mean, is the RCMP formally asking drivers not to travel? Has there been an official travel advisory that's been issued?
Well, I think we're beyond a travel advisory right now. We've got most major roads and highways pretty much closed throughout southern Manitoba. So no one should be out there. Like, people saw this coming, and like I say, there are obviously a lot of locations they're not driving to road conditions, which is resulting in people, like the multi-vehicle pileup is your evidence right there of people not driving to road conditions because they can't respond quick enough to the vehicles that are either hitting others or hitting the ditch. And
there are some folks, Sergeant Meneg, who might decide to drive or for whatever reason is on the road. I mean, what happens if someone does go or drive on a road that's closed? Are there signs that say it's closed, or are there gates?
Most locations will not have physical gates. You'll see locations like Highway 75, Highway 1 will have gates that basically will stop vehicles from moving ahead. But most roads and highways in Manitoba, like I say, you can access them. They're accessible from pretty much anywhere. So it's just not logistically possible to put gates and pylons or officers at all these locations. 511 gives you that information. The media is all over it this morning, so most people should be kind of aware of what's open, what's closed. It is now an offense under the Highway Traffic Act in Manitoba. If you're caught driving on a closed road, is a $300 offense. For regular motorists, for businesses or larger vehicles, the fine is even higher. Like I say, with conditions today, it's obviously clearly a day to stay home and just wait it out.
We'll be hearing about what the weather is going to be like shortly. We'll also hear from the province. Sergeant Meneg, I'm sure we'll speak again today. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Sergeant Paul Meneg speaks for Manitoba RCMP. We are opening our call-in lines in our next half hour. Let us know how you're managing. Did you get caught off guard with the winter weather? Perhaps you're stuck right now because of a multi-vehicle pileup. And just happening right now, the province has issued a Manitoba emergency alert because of hazardous road conditions, high winds and blizzard-like conditions. And perfect time to introduce Tara Liskey, Regional Operations Executive Director with the province's Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. She joins us by Zoom now. Hi, Tara.
Hi, good afternoon.
As I was doing that introduction, that emergency alert popped up. I imagine part of that decision-making came from your office as well?
It did, in collaboration with other departments in the province.
Why decide to send this emergency alert?
In consultation with what we're observing out on the highways, with the RCMP, with the accidents, with the emergency response, we are highly advising motorists to avoid driving on highways at this time.
Can you give us a sense here, how serious are these conditions? I mean, how serious of a thing is this?
Well, in many locations, the visibility is down to zero, which doesn't allow drivers to make decisions or see obstructions in front of them, hence causing accidents and either running into our physical barricades, as the RCMP has described, and or other vehicles, or veering off and hitting the ditch. And when serious incidents happen and accidents happen, emergency response also needs to get out to assist people out on the highway.
You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. Hello as well to the folks watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. An emergency alert has been issued. The province issuing this hazardous road conditions alert because of high winds and blizzard-like conditions. We're speaking with Tara Liskey, who is the Regional Operations Executive Director with the province's Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Help us get a sense of what the province's roads are like right now. Is it the same everywhere?
Well, we're seeing it as far north as up by the Paw. There are some road closures up there, but it predominantly is down in southern Manitoba across from east to west. Many of our roads are closed. Many have very bad visibility. The road closures are probably the ones that have zero visibility. And we're asking all drivers to stay where they are until conditions improve.
What plans are in place right now? Because the snow plowing operations, or what your folks have to do to reopen roads, what's in place right now?
Yeah, so as far as our operations, in some areas where the visibility is extremely low or nearing zero, we have pulled our plows off the highways as well for the safety of our staff as well as the motorists that are on the highways. But we do monitor the conditions, and as the conditions improve, we will have our plows go back out onto the highways, remove any snow accumulated. When the wind is down enough, we will apply salt or sand to assist with any of the traction. And we work closely with the RCMP to provide them with some of the conditions and our operations, because it's ultimately the RCMP that will have to reopen the highways.
Do you prepare for these sorts of conditions? Is it something that you're expecting?
Well, with the forecast that was in the forthcoming, we obviously saw it coming. Our maintenance staff are always prepared for everything, whether it is the road closures, working extended hours. They're always there to support ensuring that the roads are in safe condition.
Appreciate you making time to talk about this. I'm sure it's a very busy day for you and your folks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tara Liskey is the Regional Operations Executive Director with the province's Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. If you're just joining us, an emergency alert has been issued for the province because of not very good road conditions. Many roadways and highways are closed. And as you heard from the province, they will be working to try to reopen those roads in conjunction with the police, with the RCMP, and depending on where you are, your local department as well. We're opening our phone lines in our next half hour. You might be one of those folks in a vehicle right now because of a crash or because of road closures. Stay tuned after your 12:30 news. We're going to open up our phone lines to hear about how you're managing today. Riley Lachuk came in early today. You've been very busy, Riley.
I've barely had
have you had a break yet?
Time to have a little bit of a
Sure
break here.
But Riley Lachuk, CBC Manitoba weather specialist. People might be wondering how long might these conditions last. What's your sense?
I would safely say in Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, prepare for at least another 4 to 6 hours of this. I mean, winds will start to back off a little bit by the time we get to the late afternoon, but it is going to take some time to get highways back open, to get things moving again here. So prepare, especially on some of those more open highways, the Trans-Canada, Highway number 6 up into the Interlake. Some of those open highways, I would say prepare for some extended poor visibility and poor conditions. Really, I would even say stretching into the morning hours tomorrow. Like I said, we'll start to see some winds dying down a little bit. Looking at current wind speed and gust at the top of the clock, some of these numbers have been changing before my eyes here. Winnipeg right now, we're north winds 60 gusting to 76. Emerson's gusting to 80 at the moment. Portage gusting to 70. We are looking at gusts into the early afternoon at least, continuing up to that 90 mark, particularly west of the city, on that corridor sort of between Winnipeg and Carberry, Austin, in that region. That's where we're looking at some of the strongest wind gusts through the afternoon today. Not as strong. We've started to see winds die off a little bit, ever so slightly back to the west. So Brandon's 30 gusting 50 right now, 40 gusting 60 in the Dauphin area at the moment. So we're starting to see the winds die off a bit in the western part of the province. But here in Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, the Southern Interlake, these winds are going to continue to gust very strong for several more hours at least before we start to see them dying off into the overnight period tonight.
So very serious conditions. If you're just joining us, and you may not have seen this on your phone, the province has issued a Manitoba emergency alert, issuing hazardous road conditions alert because of high winds and blizzard-like conditions. We know that at least 30 crashes have been reported because of those conditions. Southern Health, we're told, we're just getting now, that it has called a code orange at St. Anne Hospital and Bethesda Regional Health Centre. Both of those sites have received patients from multi-vehicle crashes near St. Anne. A code orange is called when a hospital or health system is responding to a potential sudden influx of patients. The RCMP and various police outfits have also advised against driving today because of those conditions. And we heard from the RCMP in this half hour that you may even be fined $300 if you're found driving on a road that is officially closed. And by the way, some roads may not even have barriers or signs. We were going to go through all of those road closures, Riley, but essentially there's so many that you can pretty much assume that
the list of ones that are still open is shorter.
That's true. You probably could do that too.
The reality of it right now.
But the advice is the strong recommendation from officials, and for folks watching us on YouTube, you'll be able to see just how much red there is on the Manitoba 511 website. I mean, everything is closed. Don't travel.
Yeah.
Riley Lachuk is our CBC weather specialist. So a few more hours of this. Do we have any details yet about how much snow has fallen or what sort of metrics we have in terms of how fast the wind was blowing?
I anticipate that several people are going to ask me this question throughout the day today. It is going to be really hard to pick a number on how much it actually snowed here in southern Manitoba, just because as fast as it was falling, it was blowing away. So, best estimate, probably a couple of centimeters here in Winnipeg. Maybe a little bit more outside the city, particularly north of the city of Winnipeg. But really, it will be really hard to tell just because, like I said, as fast as the snow was falling, it was blowing away in the wind. So it pretty much lost at the moment on how much actually fell.
We'll give you a couple minutes of a break.
Okay. I'll come back and talk about your weekend forecast in a moment.
Sounds good. Thank you. Riley Lachuk, CBC Manitoba weather specialist. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. I'm Faith Fundal. The weather is the big story of the day, but there are other stories as well. Stay tuned. We'll have more coming up.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
22 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. We'll talk more about the weather still to come. First, though, as Canada beefs up its border with $1.3 billion to satisfy the incoming U.S. administration, the CBC's Karen Pauls spent the day at the Manitoba-U.S. border at Emerson. This weekend also marks 3 years since the Patel family tragically died. They froze in a field while illegally crossing into Manitoba from the United States. One of the folks Karen spoke with was Chris Brown, the program manager for police dog services with the RCMP, who told her about a particular call he got this past fall.
So on the night in question, it was late November, I was at home and I was on call. And I received a request for service from IBET, which is our integrated border enforcement team. And what I learned during the phone call, it was a very brief phone call because time is of the essence with these things. I learned that there had been 5 illegal migrants spotted crossing the border, and they were now in Canada, and the IBET members and the Morris Detachment members had located them, and upon challenging them to go into police custody, they ran away. And the first thing I did was say I would go, of course, and the second thing I did was check my phone to check the temperature in this area, because the temperature varies from area to area in Manitoba. And I saw that it was minus 21 and minus 30 with the wind chill. And I instantly had a nightmare about 2022. So I got dressed as quickly as I could. I got my dog prepped. I got my gear prepped. I dressed with layers. We're trained for this. We know how to do this. I've been doing this a long time. The wrinkles come honestly. And I hightailed it as fast as I could from my house down here. And when I got here in an hour and 5 minutes from my house, north of Winnipeg. And I was briefed by the IBET member, who did a phenomenal job at scene. She was phenomenal and instrumental in containing the area. And the area that I was required to search is right behind you. It's this stand of brush right here. So according to the members, they were able to contain the scene very quickly, which keeps those people that we're looking for in one spot. I checked my gear one more time, made sure the dog was set up and we were good to go. And we went to the last known point where she saw them entering the bush line. And from there, we quickly located 4 subjects. And one had surrendered prior to my arrival, so that was the 5. So when we were finished at about 11 o'clock, so I arrived here at 10 o'clock, just after 10, by 11 o'clock we had all 5 in custody. The last person that we interviewed, the last migrant that we interviewed, he spoke better English than the first 4, and he said that there was a 6th. And panic really set in by this time, because the first 5 that we had encountered were frozen, and they were in various states of hypothermia. So I got Mac out again. I put on fresh gloves, fresh balaclava, because everything was sweaty and cold, and I didn't want to get cold myself. And we initiated a search. We didn't track, we initiated a search, and we basically circled the entire stand of brush till we got downwind. We used the wind to our advantage, and Mac instantly indicated to me that there was another human source of scent upwind, and I just followed him through the brush, lost my toque, lost my balaclava, lost my glasses, and instantly we found the 6th person, and that person had already gone to sleep. So now it's battle stations to make sure that we get that person out as fast as we can. We were able to carry him out and get him to safety. And one of the key points to this whole thing was, on the way here, the members did a fantastic job of making sure that there were adequate first responders here. Quite often we can only get 1 ambulance because of how rural this area is, and they were able to secure 3 ambulances and multiple fire trucks. So each person that we were able to find got to a warm, safe place very quickly and got into medical care. So super effort by everybody.
Chris Brown is the program manager for Police Dog Services with the Manitoba RCMP, speaking with the CBC's Karen Pauls. While visiting the Manitoba with the Canada-U.S. border, she also met with Sergeant Lance Goldow. He's head of the RCMP Integrated Border Enforcement Unit in this province.
So we are currently on Road Zero, which is the international border between that separates Canada and the United States.
It's been 3 years since the tragic death of the Patel family. Right near here, can you point out where they are, where they were found?
Yeah, correctly. So the mother of the Patel family was just over in this area over here by the fence, and Mr. Patel and the 2 children were approximately a half a mile past here, further west.
And 3 years later, what kind of movement are you seeing across the border here? Did that tragedy slow things down at all?
So I would say, I mean, January is a new year, so I can't speculate as to what may happen, but I would say so far we are on average for apprehensions that we were roughly 10 to 12 a month, very similar to what we saw last year and the year prior.
Okay, so not a huge increase, but we're not seeing them drop at all.
Correct. Again, I would say that we're probably on average for what we've seen. Of course, we're always anticipating what the future could look like with the new administration in the United States, and we're prepared to respond to that. But as for right now, it's basically what we've seen the last year as well on average.
You mentioned the changing of administration. What news have you gotten here at the border from announcements that are taking place in Ottawa, $1.3 billion package, new technology, more canine units, that sort of thing? What are you hearing here?
Yeah, I mean, for my unit specifically, I mean, I think that's a very new announcement that was made. So I'm eagerly waiting to see how that will filter down specifically to my unit and how it affects or how it could affect Manitoba. Any more support to what's already out here is always welcome, whether it's human resource related, and we've seen an increase in that, and any more technology or newer technology we can add to what's existing out here already is a huge benefit for sure.
We saw a drone. Apparently more drones in the picture. What about, have you heard anything about the Black Hawk helicopters coming down this way?
I wish I had an answer for you. Unfortunately, I would have to divert that question to someone at a much higher level, probably to Ottawa. I have heard that they were, or they potentially could be a part of the Border Patrol assets that we have. Where they end up landing, I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Sergeant Lance Goldow is head of the RCMP's Integrated Border Enforcement Unit in Manitoba. He was speaking with the CBC's Karen Pauls. We're at 29 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. I'm sitting in here on Radio Noon. Hello to the folks watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Kevin Nipatebo. Nipatebo is our streaming producer. Sierra Sanders, our studio director, and Marshall Hodgins. Sorry, Marshall. I was looking at your face and then your name stopped. Marshall Hodgins is on the controls today. We are going to be talking and opening our phone lines to listeners out there in our next half hour. 2047-800-893 is our live line, 2047-800-893. We'd love to hear from folks about how the weather today has changed your day. We have many road closures. An emergency alert has been issued by the province. All of those details, and we'll hear from folks after your CBC Winnipeg News. It is 12:30.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at -9 with blizzard conditions in downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Yes, in case you missed it, an emergency alert went out on cell phones a short time ago. Officials are asking people to stay off all roadways in southern Manitoba as the conditions are worsening. Multiple highways are closed. Visibility is near zero. There are multi-car crashes and pileups on highways in all directions heading out of Winnipeg. Mounties say there's a very bad crash on Highway 15 just east of the city. Highway 1 between Brandon and Winnipeg is closed. Chris Park's wife was on her way to work when she got in one this morning on a crash on the overpass over Plessy and the rail line underneath. He parked his truck and walked to get her. He says her pickup was wedged between two semis, and she's lucky to be alive.
About 12, there's 2 or 3 semis in there. There's 7 or 8 cars in the ditch on the right-hand side that just slid off the road.
There are also multi-car pileups and crashes on Highway 1 near Headingley. Right now, Mounties are reporting at least 30 crashes. And a code orange has been called at 2 southern Manitoba hospitals in response to a multi-vehicle collision near St. Anne. Shared Health says the affected hospitals are Bethesda Regional Health Center in Steinbach and St. Anne Hospital. A code orange is called when a hospital is responding to a potential influx of patients. A code orange alert was called at Health Sciences Center in Winnipeg around 10:45 this morning. They say it's in response to several multi-vehicle crashes outside the city. Shared Health says an alert is called to inform staff a code orange could be coming. And Environment Canada says the storm is moving into the extreme southeast corner of the province. The blizzard warning is still in effect for most of the Red River Valley, extending up into the Interlake. Brian Proctor is a meteorologist with Environment Canada. He says the wind continues to be a serious factor.
Numerous stations reporting gusts well in excess of 60 to 90 kilometers an hour at this point in time across the province. So a very blustery day out there is probably the best way to word it.
Proctor says the wind will start tapering off later this afternoon and into the evening and improve, moving from the northwest to the northeast, or southeast rather. My apologies, from the northwest to the southeast. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app.
All right, thanks very much.
Back soon.
It's Matt Humphrey from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. At 32 and a half minutes after 12 o'clock, I'm Faith Fundal here on the program. Sierra Sanders, our studio director, Kevin Ipatebo is our streaming producer, and Marshall Hodgins is on the controls today. If you're just joining us now and you might be wondering, an emergency alert has been issued by the province of Manitoba because of hazardous road conditions. There are high winds and blizzard-like conditions. As you've been hearing on the program, we talked about this in our last half hour. At least 30 crashes have been reported. Drivers are essentially being told to stay off all of our roadways in southern Manitoba because blizzard conditions have already led to pileups and even warnings from hospitals. We heard about a code orange condition at a couple of healthcare places. Riley Lechek is our CBC Manitoba weather specialist. You have been asked many, many questions today. busy person.
I'm ready for many more.
Let's do a recap here. What does it look like out there, and what should people expect?
So looking at wind right now, south winds in Winnipeg at the airport at the top of the clock, 59 gusting to 76 out of the north. And really, this is the similar situation that we're seeing really right across the Interlake. Across much of southern Manitoba right now. Winds in Portage gusting to 70 this hour, 60 in Morden officially, 80 in Emerson. A little bit of tapering off happening to the west of us. So winds more like 30 gusting 50 in Brandon at the moment. So we're starting to see winds drop off a little bit west to east, but we'll still see some very strong winds across the Red River Valley through the southern Interlake into Winnipeg as we get through the afternoon hours. prepare for visibility issues to persist on highways for really the afternoon into the evening. That's when we really start to see winds starting to back off a little bit. We're done with the snow. I mean, radar's still showing a few stray flurries out there, but we're pretty much done with it. Actually, we're back into a little bit of sunshine even in Winnipeg at the moment. Nonetheless, we still do have a blizzard warning in Winnipeg just because we are looking at those very windy conditions and the visibility concerns lasting for at least the next several hours yet. So that remains in place. A blowing snow advisory to the west. Behind all of this comes some very cold Arctic air, and this has already prompted extreme cold warnings through far northern Manitoba, a blizzard warning along the Hudson Bay coast where we could see wind chills as cold as minus 50 in Churchill overnight tonight. That is frostbite on exposed skin in just minutes. So some very cold air coming behind that. When we start to see the winds dying down, well, through the afternoon, I mean, by the time we get to 4 or 5 o'clock, we'll be at 40 gusting 60 out of the north. We'll start to see that dying down once we get into Saturday. So more like 20 gusting 40 to start the day tomorrow. So still a bit breezy tomorrow, a lot brighter as we get into the day on Saturday. Temperatures fall in the long range down to minus 21 for Saturday, minus 21 for Sunday as well for forecast highs.
So we are opening our phone lines up here. There have been a lot of changes today for many folks. Call our line, live line, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. How did you have to change the day today because of the weather? Perhaps you're one of those folks who are stuck right now. You're in your vehicle because of blizzard conditions or because you're in a closed road. Let us know, 204-780-0893. How are you managing? Were you caught off guard with what you noticed earlier today? 204-780-0893. We'd love to hear from you. You can also text us, 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. What does it look like where you are in the province? We'd love to hear from you. Riley Lechuk is our CBC Manitoba weather specialist. We've been hearing, Riley, of pileups across the province. I mean, how do these conditions compare with blizzards in past years?
I mean, this is the first real one we've had this season.
I don't remember seeing or talking about a blizzard warning yet this year. So
yeah, this is, I believe, our first blizzard warning here in southern Manitoba. I mean, certainly we've seen some storms or we've had some gustier winds. That is kind of par for the course when we see things like Alberta Clippers coming through. As always, some windy conditions, usually with an Alberta Clipper, northwesterly winds follow behind that. I mean, this is a little unusual. I mean, it is January in Manitoba, so really anything can happen with our weather, but these are abnormally strong winds that we're seeing across southern Manitoba. Usually with an Alberta Clipper, maybe we get top end 40, gusting 60 through parts of southern Manitoba, but yeah, seeing wind gusts at any time, I think up to 80, 90 plus is a little unusual for our weather here in Manitoba.
So were you driving today and you weren't expecting those conditions? Call our live line. We'd love to hear from you, 204-780-0893. How much were you caught off guard as you were driving today? We do have several hospitals that have issued code orange alerts. Essentially what hospitals do is if they're expecting an influx of possible influx of patients, they issue code orange alerts so that healthcare providers will be prepared for that. Earlier today and throughout, as we were doing the show, the province of Manitoba issued an emergency alert as well because of those treacherous conditions. We're going to feature some of the Manitobans who are managing all of this. Riley Lechuk is in studio as well to talk more about what to expect. I think earlier you said a few more hours at least, at the very least, until the end of today for those wind conditions.
I would say winds start dying down ever so slightly as we get through the afternoon hours here, but really staying strong. North 40 gusting to 60 until we get to about this upper hour tonight. We don't really start to see the wind backing off in earnest until we get into the overnight hours, but still we're looking at breezy conditions persisting into tomorrow. But once we can start to see the winds backing off a bit, that's when we can start, cleaning up snow drifts. Visibility will improve significantly as we get into the day tomorrow. I mean, this, at least here in the south, this Alberta Clipper didn't bring a whole ton of snow, which was, take with it what you will. But
the wind, the wind is
the wind. I mean, I was saying earlier, hard to kind of measure how much snow we got. I know that's a question that a lot of people are going to have, is how much snow actually fell. A lot of it blew away. Like a lot of it was blowing away as it was falling here in southern Manitoba. It was a bit of an, I would say, unusual start to the day for me anyway. I walked to work at about 6:30 this morning. It was +2. It was slightly damp. It was almost calm here in downtown Winnipeg.
Then it all changed.
And then by about 7:15, 7:30, it was a totally different city.
We're going to head to the phone lines here. Shelley is on the line now. Shelley, how has the day been for you?
Oh, hi. Actually, I was called. Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes. Hi. You're live on the program.
Yeah, no, my brother was traveling with his wife to Cancun, and they boarded the WestJet flight to go to Cancun around 8:30 this morning. And because of the blizzard and everything, they sat on the plane on the runway, and then were finally let off the flight. I'm going to say probably about 11 o'clock. They were let off the flight finally.
And your brother was on the plane waiting, essentially.
They had to sit for like 3 hours like that on the plane. But I believe, because he did check the passengers' rights, they're within their rules. So I think they can do this for 3 hours, apparently. And then they finally let them off the plane. But now they're in Winnipeg. They're going to have to find a place to stay. I guess they're going to try to get out tomorrow if they can. But I'm going to mention the poor people who were waiting for the flight to come pick them up in Mexico, because those who are in the hotel in Mexico have probably been put out of their rooms, and they're waiting at an airport down in Mexico somewhere, probably right. Cancun, waiting to be picked up. And then I'm an ex-nurse, so I want to put a shout out to all the nurses who tried to get into work today in this weather, because I have done it over and over and over again when I lived in Winnipeg. When there is a blizzard, these gals bundle up, they walk in, they find somebody to get them in, and they get in there to relieve their fellow coworkers. So can we give a shout out to the support staff, the nurses, the doctors, all those who are trying to keep these hospitals running during this horrible weather, because they are unsung heroes. Because you have no idea what it's like when you have to work a day shift and this kind of blizzard rolls in, and there's no way to get in except by foot, or if you have a really good vehicle, or if somebody's got a skidoo to get you in. I was trapped in the hospital in 1986 for that big blizzard, and we were stuck there for 3 days. So everybody give a shout out to the nurses and the doctors and the support staff, the housekeepers, the people who are cooking the food to keep these hospitals going. They are the unsung heroes during all of this.
There are a lot of folks who are expected to go to work, right? Shelley,
they have to. That's the worst part when weather like this comes in, because you're expected to come in. And when you can't get in, you got to do it by foot. I did it in 2018. I had to walk down River Avenue, down the middle of River Avenue, to get over the Norwood Bridge, to get by the research center, to crawl through the parking lot, to get into the tunnel system, to get into work. And I started at 5:30 in the morning so I can meet my day shift in the morning, because there's nobody else there. There's nobody else there. And these nurses have to do it. And God loves them for doing it. And everybody needs to recognize essential service people have to get into work when this weather is on. We lost power here in Russell for a half an hour, and Hydro's out there working in high winds trying to get this power restored, and they managed to.
So a lot of folks out there, Shelley, thank you for calling us. Perhaps there are other folks as well who are listening and want to share what it's been like for you. 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. Linda's also on the line now because they've had to venture to the airport, I think. Linda, what's it been like for you?
Yeah, we went to the airport at 5:30, and like Shelley said, my husband sat on the tarmac for about 3 hours, was let out to stretch the legs and get something to eat, and then waited, and finally at noon, the flight was officially canceled. So I am just getting ready to venture to pick him up. Sadly, I know I shouldn't be going, but he doesn't really want to sit there all day. So I'm being very cautious and going to take my time and just go slow. So, and like Shelley said, yeah, definitely shout out to all those who have made it, and including the first responders and RCMP who are also on the road taking care of those who weren't so lucky this morning.
Linda, appreciate you phoning in today. Thank you. You can call us as well, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. Riley Lechak is our CBC Manitoba weather specialist. The conditions that you heard about there, I mean, not surprising, is it?
No, not surprising at all. I just want to note that the blizzard warning has actually just ended for the city of Winnipeg. Doesn't mean venture out on the highway right now. Doesn't mean things are back to normal. It just means that we don't necessarily meet the criteria for this being a blizzard. There's a very specific criteria that Environment Canada has when it defines what is a blizzard in Manitoba, and that is, I like to call it sort of the rule of fours, visibility of 400 meters or less for more than 4 hours, and I forget what the third four is. I had it at the top of my head, but but nonetheless, it does. Just because we don't quite meet that criteria right now doesn't mean that the conditions, aren't still bad out there for visibility. The other one is winds of 40 kilometers an hour or greater, which, I mean, we still have that happening here across southern Manitoba. So it just signals that maybe we'll start to see winds dying down by the time we reach late afternoon here in the Red River Valley.
So the message from the RCMP is stay off the highways.
Yeah.
It is from the police and the province. Even though the blizzard warning has now been lifted for the city of Winnipeg, it is still the case for other parts. Riley, we'll get back to you in a moment, but we want to head out to the scene here because the CBC's Josh Crabb was out speaking with some folks. There have been dozens of crashes involving numerous folks. Chris Parks got a call from his wife Shelley earlier today after she was involved in a crash on the South Perimeter Highway. He spoke with the CBC's Josh Crabb.
She called me. She's on her way to work, and she was going up over the bridge. And she called me. It was total whiteout on the bridge, and there's like a 12-car pileup. Her pickup truck is wedged up like this between two semis. She's lucky to be alive. So she called me, and I pulled my truck up over here and seen that I wasn't going to be able to get in there, so I just U-balled over the Meridian and I walked up over. And just when I got to where her truck was, the ambulance guys were pulling her out and taking her to the ambulance. They checked her vitals in the ambulance, and we just sort of walked over the bridge now. So
I'm so sorry. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm fine, but I'm just worried about my wife. I got to get her home. She's been sitting in there. The doors were both open, and it's really windy and cold.
So about 12 cars, you say?
About 12. There's 2 or 3 semis in there. There's 7 or 8 cars in the ditch on the right-hand side that just slid off the road.
Just how bad are the conditions up there?
It's total whiteout. You can't see anything. It's like, oh, look at this guy going in there at 100. Oh, holy smokes. That's what happened. She said people were just kept coming, and then she got hit from behind, then somebody hit the truck behind her, and then there's like, it's all wedged, cars all wedged in like this, and then a bunch of guys spilled off in the ditch, I guess. So I don't know.
It's a bad day for driving.
It's certainly not somewhere you want to be at. Anybody coming up here should be turning around. So, but I got to get her home.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, guys. I'll send you those.
That's Chris Parks. He went out to rescue his wife after she was in a multi-vehicle crash on the South Perimeter Highway this morning, speaking with the CBC's Josh Crabb. There are still advisories up in effect. The blizzard warning has now ended for the city of Winnipeg, but doesn't mean that the conditions won't be bad.
Yeah.
Riley Lechak is our CBC Manitoba weather specialist. Let's just go. Can we go around the province? I mean, what does it look like right now?
Sure. So, I'll start with the watches and warnings. So, eastern Manitoba into the White Shell, that is under a blowing snow advisory. Much of the Red River Valley, Trans-Canada Highway and south, including the city of Portage la Prairie, still under the blizzard warning. It's now been lifted for the city of Winnipeg and the Interlake. And like I said, doesn't mean that conditions are suddenly better. It just means that we're looking at conditions starting to improve as we get through the afternoon. Brandon, Verdun, the western side of the province, at the moment still under a blowing snow advisory. We are still looking at winds gusting upwards of 60 kilometers an hour through the afternoon in that part of the province. Behind this, as I mentioned, some very gusty Winds and some very cold temperatures as we get through the afternoon. So right now, Swan River's at -14, Thompson's at -24, Tadouli Lake -32, Churchill's at -29, -10s through Brandon, Dauphin into the Westman region right now, and -9s for Portage, Winnipeg, Steinbach, and into northwestern Ontario. So you can kind of picture where that cold front is starting to sweep across north to south across the province, where we're getting these colder temperatures starting to flow in. So some much colder air coming in as we get through the afternoon hours.
I want to mention our phone numbers because there are folks out there feeling a whole bunch of feelings. 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. How has the weather changed your day today? Perhaps you were driving, the conditions changed, and then suddenly you got stuck. Let us know how you're managing, 204-780-0893. You can text us as well, 204-588-7355. We're just about 10 minutes before 1 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. Hello as well to the folks watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Kevin Nipatebo is our streaming producer. Marshall Hodgins on the controls, and Sierra Sanders is our studio director. Stay tuned because we're going to hear from the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, Lisa Naylor, in a couple of minutes, about 2 or 3 minutes here. Riley Lechuk is our CBC Manitoba weather specialist, and you've been here since early this morning. If people are just joining us, how much longer should they expect these sorts of weather conditions?
You know, I think that the winds will stay strong, maybe not as strong as they have been, but certainly still staying strong as we get through the afternoon hours. So by 4 or 5 o'clock, looking at winds north 40 gusting to 60 through the Red River Valley. Maybe a few more gusts hanging on into the evening hours tonight, but starting to die down to something like northwest 20 gusting 40 by the time we get to the morning hours tomorrow. No doubt this is going to impact operations at the airport through the rest of the day. I was just counting on the airport's website. So far today, somewhere around 16 flights have been canceled out of Winnipeg. Several more of those delayed. Likely, I would say that will continue as we get into the afternoon hours. So if you're heading to the airport, make sure you check on things before you head there.
And give us a call because we heard from a couple of folks of people who were actually on the plane waiting to leave. But they stayed on the plane and eventually were told, nope, got to get off the plane. 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can text us at 204-588-7355. In about 2.5 minutes, we're going to hear from the Minister of Infrastructure and Transportation, Lisa Naylor. I should mention that you may or may not have seen this on your mobile devices, but an emergency alert was issued by the province of Manitoba because of hazardous road conditions, the high winds and blizzard conditions. Riley Lechuk was talking about that. It's interesting because this is the first time for southern Manitoba that I've seen a blizzard warning, and I initially, as a not experienced Manitoban, thought it should be fine. I'm sure it will. And I was surprised as well to see some of those photos and videos.
Yeah, there's that part of it, and I think when you see a blizzard warning, I think there's a lot of misconception among some people that this means a big dump of 40, 50 centimeters of snow along with it. Not always the case. As we've seen today, maybe only a couple centimeters of snow here in Winnipeg, 3, 4 outside the city, but this was triggered because of the winds and how long these very gusty winds were going to last here.
So drivers are being asked to stay off southern Manitoba highways because of those conditions. We've heard about hospitals issuing code orange alerts. That's when they essentially implement a system because they're expecting a whole bunch of folks to show up, people who might be injured, an influx of patients. That alert, again, also issued by the province of Manitoba just as the show was starting to ask folks to stay off of our highways. We're going to hear from the Minister of Infrastructure and Transportation, Lisa Naylor, in just a few moments here. Riley, before you go, let's do a quick recap of what to expect.
So for the rest of the afternoon, through the Red River Valley, through really much of south central Manitoba, looking at gusty winds continuing north 40 gusting to 60 by the time we get to late this afternoon. But staying windy today, very windy nonetheless. Blowing snow out in the open areas. Maybe not so much here in the city, but certainly in some of the more open areas, blowing snow. Behind that, some very cold Arctic air starts to move in, and we'll start to feel that as we get late into the afternoon. Temperature falling to minus 13 in Winnipeg. Highs not even getting above minus 20 for the next several days. So we're looking at a cold long-range forecast for us.
All right. I hope you can take a little break.
I will try my best.
Okay, we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good.
That's Fred Lelechek, our CBC Manitoba weather specialist. On the line now is Lisa Naylor, the Minister of Infrastructure and Transportation. I'm sure it's been a busy day for the folks working in your ministry.
Yes, it has been, Faith. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Your folks made a decision to issue an emergency alert. Why make that decision?
Yes, we really want folks to know, especially in southern Manitoba, that it's very important to stay off the roadways right now. The weather conditions are worsening. There's zero visibility on those highways, and we want to keep Manitobans safe.
It sounds like some folks were caught off guard with the conditions, even though there were warnings that were put in place since yesterday. How would you characterize your crews? Were they caught off guard as well?
I wouldn't say the crews were caught off guard. We certainly knew through Environment Canada's weather warnings that there would be zero visibility today, and it's always the hope that folks are checking road conditions before leaving the house to go to work. But our crews were out, as they always are, at 4 a.m. Unfortunately, due to the zero visibility and the risk to both our crews and other motorists on the road, we did start pulling plows off the road at about 8 a.m. in a staggered fashion. But, you know, when they can't see, that's a risk to any motorist they may encounter and a risk to our drivers as well. So we had to start pulling plows off the road, and certainly around that same time is when reports started to come in about various collisions across southern Manitoba.
What's your message to people who are listening, thinking, "Well, it looks fine right now. I'm sure I can drive." And hopefully, I don't see a barrier that says the road is closed. I'm sure it's fine. What would you say to them?
Yeah, you know what? Some of the roads are in fact closed. There's not always the ability to even get a barrier out there because there's no visibility to do that. When the RCMP closes the highway, it's very clearly shown on our Manitoba 511. If you take a look at that now, every highway in southern Manitoba is red, which means nobody should be on it. There's, you know, some yellow, like very risky roads in other parts of the province, but folks need to check Manitoba 511. And we really are asking Manitobans at this time to simply stay off the roads, stay at work, stay at home, keep yourself safe while we try to attend to the multiple collisions across the province.
Do you have a sense of I mean, it looks like it's going to be a very busy day, but can you contextualize that for us? How busy has it been for your folks?
Well, certainly our crews have been very busy trying to support emergency services. We have a number of collisions across the province. We have 3 different health centers on code orange right now, preparing for possible high influx of patients. We don't yet know the number of injuries or the acuity. We have some collision sites where it's almost impossible for emergency services to get there. So my department is trying to provide escorts and support. And we're also coordinating the Emergency Management Office, which is also within my transportation department, is coordinating all the different services within government for essential government response, as well as various paramedics across the province.
Are we at a point where a state of emergency is being considered?
No, this isn't a state of emergency, but the emergency alert that went out is very clear that it is not okay to be on these highways at this time.
Minister, thanks for making time today, and I'm sure I'll talk to you again on Up to Speed today.
Okay, absolutely. Take care, Faith.
You as well. Lisa Naylor, the Minister of Infrastructure and Transportation. As you heard, essentially all of the highways in southern Manitoba are closed because of blizzard, treacherous road conditions. As you heard the minister say, there are even some places where emergency crews can't get there. So they're asking drivers to stay off the roads. Stay here, stay tuned here on CBC Radio 1. We'll keep you up to date as the day progresses. And we'll also hear about the latest conditions and what to do if you're stuck. What if you're out there and the blizzard comes by? We're going to have that interview and, of course, the very latest on your CBC Winnipeg News. Thanks very much for joining us today. I'm Faith Fundal here on Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1. Marshall Hodgins is our technician. Sierra Sanders, our director, producer of the program here is Wendy Parker, and Kevin Nipatebo is our streaming producer. Thanks very much for welcoming us during this noon hour. More to come here on the program, and stay safe out there. Take care.